This is part two of the It's Only Basketball Podcast. All right, so we left off talking about how Jalen Brunson is a crafty guard and his abilities to score and create in small spaces is the reason why I believe he can be a 1A on a championship level team. But I'll take it a step further and say he can be a 1A on a championship level team. And part of me proving that point was showing you the numbers for when all the chips were on the line. And you can see Jalen Brunson in 6 games was averaging 50, 35, 89 splits, 42 minutes a game. The best player on the Knicks by far that series, and in the Cleveland series as well, because Julius Randle was hurt that series. I think you can kind of say he was hurt this series too. But again, all NBA caliber player. 41, 28, 71. Not doing the job he's supposed to. It was Jalen Brunson versus the Heat out there with a little help from RJ Barrett. But my position is he took the defending conference champions to 6 games. Almost single-handedly. So if he has the capability to consistently perform at this level, he would be similar to what Jimmy Butler is, where you don't expect him to be a 1A until the playoffs come around. Another example would be Reggie Miller, where he kind of is cool and composed, and in the playoffs he goes off. Now, granted, Jalen Brunson is going off right now, but you get the kind of thing that I'm saying, where you're not expecting Brunson, even if he's averaging 26, to be then your lead guard and lead offensive option and best player on your team. But just to prove what I'm saying is true, we're gonna look at some film of Jalen Brunson this season, previous seasons, to kind of show you the type of skill set he has. Break down his game so you can really see how it is plausible for him to be that championship level guard, lead guard, and best player on the team. All right. So this was 10 days ago. Went out for 41. Haven't even seen these.
Step into Wix Studio, the new web creation platform built for AD.
At 6'6", long arms guarding Brunson. Brunson gets inside, the floater's up, shot is good. Nice soft touch.
That's that same kind of
Knicks lead
concept.
30.
See right here, again, another example. He gets off of the screen, but because he knows he isn't necessarily the fastest on the floor, he's putting his body into the trailing guard. This is what we call putting somebody in jail, right? So he's putting them in jail.
13 threes last night, right at this season's average.
To create that space. And now this is a small window right here, right? This is a whole tiny window that he's working out of, right? So this is kind of what I'm speaking on, because not only could this be considered the mid post, going towards the low post, but he's also in that mid-range area. These bumps, these fades are crucial when trying to score in these difficult positions, right? And this is something that can be emulated no matter the defense, which is what we see a lot when it comes to players of his caliber or of his skill set, players that can't necessarily rely on a fast first step or just straight explosive athleticism, though their numbers aren't going to jump out as much as, say, a guard who relies on athleticism. Their ability to remain consistent against defenses is what is important come playoff time, right? Skillful guy, Larry Bird, stay consistent. Thinking Basketball broke this down on their podcast and on their channel, how it works. But you got a guy like David Robinson, right? He was the admiral. Again, his value was more so on the defensive side of the ball, but he did have offensive capabilities. However, part of his scoring averages would increase when he would go against weaker teams, rightfully so. But that was also due to the fact he was able to abuse the same thing that got him the clean looks for him to score, meaning his first step, his athleticism, his strength. When you went against defenses of higher caliber with the centers that can at least negate his first step enough, that's when he ran into trouble. And even though he was still able to score, when you talking about being that lead guy, he wasn't necessarily a 1A, right? And that's the kind of thing that I'm trying to get at right now, right? As Jalen Brunson is the lead guard and the lead offensive option, he has the capabilities to produce in these tough situations that you will experience on the road to the finals. And because of that fact, along with him taking the Miami Heat to 6 games, I believe he is a 1A championship level type of player.
Brunson just takes his time, and as the shot clock expires, puts it in. There's a couple of notes that just went a little sour. Brunson counted.
There, because he just got a foul call on this play as well. But he's starting from that mid post area. I'll rewind it just a little bit, right? That's the layup itself. Okay. Right? He's in the mid post right here on the drive, right? He used that right shoulder to shed him because he didn't have to. He just got the smallest of steps. That's what I was explaining earlier in the tight spaces, because you see that help defender is already waiting for his drive and they're going to dig. And the big has already rotated and collapsed, predicting he's going to be able to get into this open space here. And he is, again, tagging this big man here so he can't dump it off to the big. Now, what this is displaying is his ability to overcome his physical limitations to still produce at the level you need a lead guard to do.
There's a couple of notes that just
and that skill is demonstrated by this high off the glass layup to go over the defender's head. Like that is, it's like these kinds of plays he's able to do on a regular basis, and that is just going to the craftiness of it. I think I'm not saying Sam Cassell is a 1A, but you got to look at it like Sam Cassell, just more to his offensive repertoire. And Sam Cassell was nice, but his main bread and butter was the mid-range, the bump, the post fade from the mid-range. And he was able to do that from the perimeter and get to a spot while still having a decent enough jump shot, right? Jalen Brunson is kind of a Sam Cassell type of player, except for I think he's a little shorter, but has a more dynamic offensive game, if you will, right? Sam Cassell can run your offense and pick his spots, right? Where Jalen Brunson can be your offense. See what I'm saying? Sam Cassell has to play. He played with KG, Spreewell. He was on that Celtics roster, I think in 08. I think maybe 2010 too, if he didn't retire, right? He was in Houston with Hakeem Olajuwon. So it's safe to say that even though Sam Cassell is a great player, right, he was not the engine of those offenses, right? He had to find his spots, but he was able to set up the guys who were the offense, because that was his role. With Brunson, however, I think this is his best statistical year when it comes to his playmaking and assist and creation for his teammates, right? But even then, he seems to me, when I watch him, like a score-first guard. He plays even-keeled. He can control the tempo, control the plays, get guys in spots. But when it comes down to it, he looks for his shot more than anything, right? So all this is to say, not to go around any longer than what is necessary. Brunson can be a 1A on a championship level team. And I didn't appreciate hearing that just because of his size, he wasn't able to be a 1A type of player. Because regardless of your size, you can still get it done, right? Curry got it done. Then he got KD. Then he got it done again, right? He's 6'2". You got players who were this close, right? The Supersonics, you could argue that Gary Payton was the best player on that team with Sean Kemp. Now, Sean Kemp was eaten in that series against Jordan and the Bulls. But Gary Payton was hurt that series, but Gary Payton, to me, was the best player on those Supersonics teams. You go back, that's when you go back to Isaiah Thomas, who won 2 rings, right? But even then, you can go to Dennis Johnson, who was on the Supersonics, that allowed him being he's still a kind of a big guard, but he's a point guard nonetheless, being their best player. And he led the Supersonics to a title, right? But then you have also like these contenders or high level teams that can win the championship that were right on the cusp of winning a championship that has the guard as the best player, right? You got the Pistons with Chauncey Billups. He was 6'3", kind of the same kind of player that Jalen Brunson is, where he's a strong guard, uses his size and physicality to create his space and get open looks. So you're seeing all of these things occur, right? And there's multiple examples that I'm giving you where even though it's not necessarily high likelihood from the win a ring, but that goes for everybody in general in the league too. But he can be that number one option. Chris Paul took the Suns to the finals with Booker. But that whole playoff run to get there, he shut the door on Denver and he shut the door on LA. 41. Took Denver something crucial on the road to that sweep. And I think Booker was hurt. Got hurt that run with his hamstring. So it was just Paul out there for a minute. And they played the hurt game, whatever the case may be. It is what it is. But they got to the finals and they were 2 games away from winning. So all that is to say is just Jalen Brunson can be that guy. And he is that guy. If you look at it from a statistical standpoint, he's producing at the same level as Maxey and Lillard and all of them. So if you're able to produce at that level of these premier guards, and it's leading to wins, then I think you should be able to be considered a 1A. But now, transitioning, right? This is basically saying, can you classify Brunson as a superstar, right? And the conversation of what you would classify as a superstar in the league today is something that gets continually talked about or spoken on. People feel some audience members, some people feel that there are a lot of superstars in the league, where I would say that there's a decent amount of superstar potential in players in the league, right? And some players, even though they aren't superstars yet, because of that potential, they're being marketed as superstars, but they're not exactly superstars, right? Let me give an example. This is one thing I was debating, but I thought that Anthony Edwards could be a superstar. And you'll find out in a minute. But 26, 5, and 5 is what he's giving you, right? I don't want to say account for inflation, but right now, those aren't necessarily superstar numbers the way they used to be. I think he's just a star, right? On the cusp of being a superstar. However, he is marketed like a superstar. However, what I will say to that note about his marketability, for me, you have to have been producing at this level uh, for at least a year minimum, right? Because now you can't deny that Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is a superstar, but I wouldn't have classified him as a superstar last season just because that's the first season we saw him doing it, right? He's still a star, and he had been a star since he got to OKC, um, playing alongside of Chris Paul. He was averaging 19 a game that season. Chris Paul left. He jumped up to about 22 to 23. Then the next season, he went up to 25. We can look that up right now too. But right, he was star caliber, and actually that goes to my point. Uh, I thought Shea was star caliber when he was averaging about 25 points per game and was really winning. And even though Anthony Edwards is winning, um, he's only averaging about 25 and 5. And if I'm going to be consistent, then I can't sit here and say that Edwards is a superstar just yet. Yeah, plays alongside him. He's at the 2-19. Chris Paul leaves. He jumps up to 23.7. Then he goes up to 25, right? And I'm thinking to myself that this guy is a star, right? He comes in and he averages 31. My opinion, I didn't think it would last the whole season, but it did. However, they didn't go anywhere. Make the playoffs. It didn't translate to wins. But, he was first team All NBA. And if you're making first team All NBA, you're almost a superstar with a few exemptions. Like, I think DeAndre Jordan made a first team All NBA, but it's fair to say that he was never a superstar in the so I got to thinking, right? We're talking about superstars and etc. What would classify as a superstar, and how many are there? And the only way for me to be able to figure that out is by listing out my top 10. So, this is a conversation we had on my broadcast channel on Instagram. If you don't follow me, the channel is Love of the G. Channel is posted on my page. But I'm sitting here trying to evaluate, who's a superstar. If I was to say one, so I gave my top 10 plus a few honorable mentions who I think are still superstars, but are just outside of the top 10. All right, so that list consisted of, in no order, LeBron, Kevin Durant, Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, Shea, I think that was 5, Steph Curry, Giannis, Dame, and Jimmy Butler. I think it was, right? Right. Those were the 10 in no order. And then for me, outside of the top 10, but we're still superstars, were Devin Booker, right? Jason Tatum in the top 10. I'm not certain, but I know I didn't put him over Dame or Jimmy Butler. So I think I put him right outside the top 10. But I can't deny that Jason Tatum is technically a superstar, but that's where that thing kind of gets funny with the superstar title, because Dame to me is a superstar, Jimmy's a superstar, Shea's a superstar, right? But then you have Embiid, Giannis, Jokic, right? And to a lesser extent, LeBron and KD, right? And if you want to go even lesser, Curry. But even though Curry is high level. Oh, Luka. I think that's who I was missing as well. I think I put Luka outside of my top 10 too. But I know Luka's a superstar. But the thing I'm looking at it is like even though they're superstars, right? Are they meeting that level? So, and I think the thing is, if you would say superstars are the best of the best, this is the superstar, then the other, right? Because that's what it is. You're super, right? Then the other people in the top 10 are just stars, and these stars think are stars aren't. that, right? So like I would say Jaylen Brown is just a star, right? But I wouldn't put Jaylen Brown in my top 20. And so when you go in, right, I still think those are stars, but then at some point you got to just say those are just really good players. If we're going off that metric. However, for me, you know, I would say Jaylen Brown is a star. And I think there is a decent amount of stars in the league, but there is only, I think the top 10 is superstars. And I believe there's about 12, 13 superstars in total. I think I counted off about 11 to 12. I think Brunson is on the bubble for me, right? I believe he'll solidify himself with another good playoff run. Donovan Mitchell was the one that was outside of that top 10 that I said, yeah, he's a superstar, right? Don is that boy for real. So even though he's not top 10 to me, when I'm looking at what I would consider a superstar, I believe I made a criteria too on that, right? I think it was more so your impact on winning, your marketability, and your ability to be a leader, right? Of course, I think it was like playing at an elite level whilst being a leader for your team that contributes to wins and your marketability. I think the wins is fluid because some superstars are on teams that are just very bad. But if you're still being the leader you're supposed to be, I can still consider you a superstar. But it's not like you can just be trash. Like, for instance, Russell Westbrook, 2017 year, his MVP season, he was a superstar, but they were only a 7th seed, I want to say, and were 47 and 35, which, again, his elite level of play is leading to wins, but it's not that upper echelon in which I would say other superstars, but he was that leader of the team. You see what I'm saying? So I'm just sitting here given that criteria, and to me, Donovan Mitchell fits that criteria. He led Utah to the number 1 seed, but he lost to another superstar in Kawhi Leonard, and it's tough to beat, especially when he had rolled his ankle and was coming back from injury. And he was, if he wasn't attacking downhill, getting those shooters open, he had to go score. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. They had to play Donovan Mitchell ball. And to me at least, when I watch his game, he's expressed an ability to be able to play off the basketball. However, I think now, since his scoring numbers are up and his efficiency is up and he is entering his prime, he's being a lot more ball dominant. And it's becoming, I want to say, negative for the Cavs. Not necessarily leading to losses, but like, say, the margin of victory that they could have with the roster that they've constructed is not as big than where it should be. Because with him being so ball dominant, it doesn't really allow room for Darius Garland to really flourish. I think Garland's averaging like 21 and 6. But when Donovan Mitchell was gone, he was playing some of the best basketball of the season. When Darius Garland was out the lineup, Donovan Mitchell would be hooping, playing the best basketball of the season. So when you're looking at that, that's why I would say it's slightly negative, but I digress. Just in general, Don, yeah, that's about 13, 14. I'm not going to count off the top. But with Jason Tatum, Luka, Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker, that's 14. I think there was maybe 2 more that I'm missing, but all in all, I'll say your top 15 is what you can classify as superstars. And then you have another tier that goes above that. However, I think right? I think the actual number cuts off at about 16, 17. Because I believe Anthony Davis was in my top 10 with LeBron and KD, Jimmy and Dame, right? With then you got the Curry, Embiid, Jokic, Giannis, yeah, and Shea. So that's about 10, 11. I don't know. But then Paul George and Kawhi was I was having them in my top 20. Now, to be fair, what makes that so hard for me is because that scale of players, they're like so close. That's why even though they're outside the top 10, they are top 10 players. So where you can say this person, like Booker, is top 10. You can say he's top 10 and nobody would blink. You can say Luka is top 5 and nobody would blink. For me, he's not. But, yeah, you know what I'm saying? You can say Paul George is just hitting top 10 this season and you wouldn't blink. Shea, everybody unanimous to have him top 10 now, you know. But you got these high caliber players in the league, and there's not just a numerous amount of superstars, but there is a decent. So when you're looking at how, because you have so many, when it comes to that, and if they team up, say the three of them team up, because that's what they can afford, it's still now competitive basketball. You got Kawhi, PG, Russ, James Harden on one team, but you still got Jokic, Murray, Gordon. Though they're not, the other two are not superstars. Murray plays like one in the playoffs, and they're the champions. You know, you got Jimmy and Bam out there in Miami. You got Giannis and Dame in Milwaukee. You got Embiid with Maxey. Maxey's playing like a star. He's outside of my top 15, right? Though I wouldn't consider him a superstar. He might be 20-ish, but 27 and 6 is superstar caliber numbers. Brunson, you know what I'm saying? Brunson and the Knicks. You got Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Chris Stapps, Porzingis, and Drew Holiday on one roster. My God, Derek White at the 2. So it's like so much talent that these superstars can all compete against one another while still being able to team up. And I think that there is pivotal and crucial. I'm saying. So with that being said, I'm gonna sign off right now. It's been love of the game. Follow, like, share, comment. There'll be a part 3 to this episode because there's a lot of content to unpack and uncover. But I'll see y'all next time.